So my name's Alison Beadle. I run the website and blog Sugar Free Me. And I thought I'd start doing a little bit more video clipping, so those that don't really want to sit there and read through a recipe, you can just follow it with me quite quickly. I'm going to make one of my favourite, easiest things, buckwheat and quinoa flour pancakes. I'm spicing it up a little bit because I find that quinoa flour can be a bit bland sometimes, and buckwheat can be a bit overpowering with taste. So we're going to chuck in some sea salt and some rosemary and garlic black pepper to make it a little bit nicer. So I always go with the standard amount, and then I kind of mix and match and see what kind of feels right in terms of consistency. So here's my buckwheat flour. I tend to use Root Health, which is sprouted whole wheat buckwheat flour, and it's completely gluten free. So if you're celiac, it's good. So I'm going to use about 80 grams worth of buckwheat flour. Now the good thing about buckwheat flour is that it's got quite a slimy consistency when you mix it with the liquid. So instead of having to use xanthan gum or eggs to bind it, you can get with making a pancake without having to use anything to stick it together. It holds quite nicely. And then I'm going to use another 50 grams of quinoa flour, and this gives it a bit more protein as well. It's quite high in protein. And it just changes up the flavour, so it's not too... Some people like buckwheat, some people don't. My other half is not that keen on it, so if I mix it up with different flours, it's much nicer for him. So I'm also going to add half a teaspoon of gluten-free baking powder. I'm going to add half a teaspoon of garlic pepper. I just get this from Sainsbury's, but you could use whatever spice you wanted to flavour it up. Depending on how peppery you like things, add more or less. And then, well, I've got about half a teaspoon of dried rosemary, so I'm just going to tip that in. Finally, I have a pinch of sea salt. I prefer Himalayan rock salt, but you know, you can get flavoured salts now if you wanted to. You get a little bit of flavoured salt. Give it a little mix so it's kind of well distributed. And then I'm going to add some coconut milk. You don't have to use coconut milk. You could potentially use water. You could use almond milk. Obviously, if it's sweetened, it's going to give it a sweet taste. So I try and go for unsweetened. And this is one of my favourites. I like using cocoa, just because it's got quite a low sugar count. And then I'm going to put in some coconut milk. So I normally go for about the same amount as the flour. So I've added 130 grams of various flours all together. So I'm going to start off with adding 130 millilitres of coconut milk. And give it a little bit of a stir, a little bit of a whisk around. Now, buckwheat flour is quite a starchy flour, as I've mentioned before. And as you can see, it's quite thick. So I'm going to add just a little bit more. I'm being brave, I added quite a lot because I kind of have an idea, but if you're not sure, just add a little bit by little bit. Give it a good whisk up again, and you're going to aim to get quite a kind of, it's almost like, I would say, thick double cream consistency. So you don't want it so runny that it's going to, as soon as you put it into the pan, it's going to split and separate. You want it to hold together when you flip it. I find buckwheat flour is particularly good for this, which is why they use it for making blinis, don't they? So you can see here, it's got kind of like a thick double cream consistency, and I like to give it a little bit of a whisk to get some air into that as well, and then it makes the pancakes lighter. Now I'd like to make my pancakes American style, which means they're a little bit thick and a little bit fluffy. They've got a bit of air in them. I actually find, in terms of working with gluten-free flours, it's easier to work with making American style pancakes than it is making the thinner ones, because the mixture doesn't stick together quite so well sometimes, depending on what flour you use. If you have a really thin pancake, sometimes the consistency means that when you flip it, you break it. So this is my fail-safe easy one. And there's your batter mixed up. Now we're going to cook it. On a medium heat, it needs to be hot enough so that when you pop the batter in, it sizzles a little bit, and that means that your pancakes are going to bubble up and be quite nice and airy. If it's not hot enough, you tend to get very flat, greasy pancakes, and that's not good. So I'm just heating up the oil. Now, depending on the size of your frying pan, I can fit 4 quite nicely into here. So I'm going to use my batter now. I'm going to give it a little bit of a stir just to kind of fluff it up a little bit. And then I like to use large serving spoon, dessert spoon, and I can get, whoop, make sure your flat's not too high. I can get about 4 pancakes from it. So I'm going to spoon in. And I don't know if you can hear, it's a little sizzle as I drop each one in, which means it's about the right temperature. And each pancake is probably just a little bit bigger than the size of this spoon. So I'm going to let it cook for a little bit. It takes probably about a minute or so to cook. And you want to keep an eye on the top. I don't know if you can see here, I'll wait until they start appearing. You want to see some bubbles start popping up to the surface, and when the bubbles have popped up and they stay open, it gives you an idea that it's it's cooked enough on one side to flip over to the other. So if your temperature isn't quite right, you may not get those bubbles, and then you get quite flat, dense pancakes, which are edible, but... So I don't know if you can see in the pan right now, but you can see there's some bubbles popping up at the top, which means we're kind of almost ready to flip. Key thing is you want the bubbles to come into the centre, and then we flip them over. So I'm going to start flipping. Just a tad too low. And you'll see as I flipped it over, you've already got a nice golden brown colour on one side, so it's going to be nice. Now whilst you're cooking these, you can also think about what you're going to have with them. Today I have some home-cooked ham. My other half boiled up a ham joint the other day. So I'm going to have some ham and tomatoes on it, purely because that's all I've got in the fridge. But what's quite nice on it is that you can have hummus. Sometimes I do egg and hummus, mix it together and then pile it on the top. You can put some cress on there if you fancy with it to make it nice. Or the other day I posted a picture where I did wraps. And then I wrapped tuna and beans and some veggies all cooked up together in big buckwheat and quinoa wraps. And it's the same mixture, but I just made a much bigger pancake and then just flipped it over. It was slightly thinner, but it was still enough that when you rolled it, it didn't break open. So I'm just going to check the bottom of these. It probably takes about a minute, pretty much. One key thing I've learned from cooking these is if I just pop them out straight on a plate, they tend to sweat underneath. So if you've got like a bowl where you can stand them up around the outside, or like a wire rack, you can pop them on them, they won't sweat and you won't get that soggy bottomed pancake, which, if you're going to eat them straight away, that's fine, but I tend to make a big batch and then stick some in the fridge so that I can have some for later, or pop them in the toaster. So they're a really good kind of travelling snack as well if you need something that's carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, but also you don't eat bread, you don't have anywhere to put anything cold. You can carry these or put some almond butter in the middle or something and turn it into a bit of a protein snack. Perfect. So you can see it's nicely brown on top, and I'm going to just do that for the entire mixture.